Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep today into one of the most critical military planning functions,
Absolutely.
how high-level strategists turn a complex mission into a concrete plan,
Right.
and specifically how they weave fire support, that's, your artillery, air power, electronic warfare, into the fabric of the operation from the very first minute.
And what's so fascinating here, for you listening, is that this isn't just about the steps of the process, the MDMP.
No.
It's about realizing that success hinges on a small, focused team.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the fire support staff and the field artillery planners.
Mm-hmm.
They have to continuously fight this battle against uncertainty. Our sources detail how these planners have to jump into what's called parallel planning and constantly update their own uh, highly specialized staff estimates.
So that's how they handle the information overload.
It's the only way. It's the mechanism they use to distill a massive flood of information into something, usable.
So, our mission today is to follow that fire support element's journey. We're going to watch them work through the chaos of those initial stages,
The very beginning.
receipt of mission and mission analysis. We're essentially looking at the foundation of every single operation right before the commander makes the big calls.
Precisely. We're looking at the foundational processes that make sure that, for example, when an infantry commander needs smoke or precise fires at a specific time and place 2 days from now,
Yeah.
the artillery unit has already positioned the guns, gotten the ammunition, and cleared the airspace to make it happen.
All right, let's jump into step one then. Receipt of mission. This is minute zero.
Right.
The commander gets the order from higher. Immediately, the staff is alerted. There's an initial assessment, and that first warning order goes out. It sounds frenetic.
It is.
So what's the immediate, non-negotiable action the fire support staff has to take?
The key action is anticipating maneuver. The source stresses that FS assets and all the supporting field artillery units, they're alerted as soon as practicable.
Which means immediately.
It means seconds after the order is received. I mean, this isn't just about them knowing they have a job to do.
Right.
It's about starting their own detailed collaborative planning simultaneously with the rest of the staff.
Because if they waited...
If they waited for the main staff to finish, they'd lose critical time, sometimes 48 or even 72 hours. And you need that time to move these huge assets.
That makes so much sense. Artillery units are massive. You can't just turn them on a dime. So what is the FSE, the fire support element, actually putting down on paper in this initial stage?
They're immediately grabbing the higher HQ's formal order, the O-Plan or OPORD, and they start updating their most vital document,
Which is?
the fire's running estimate. Think of it as their real-time dashboard.
Okay.
And critically, they make sure that any preliminary intelligence products, what's called IPOE, are immediately pushed down to their subordinate units.
So everyone starts planning at the same time.
That's the whole point. This flow of information is designed purely to maximize efficiency through parallel planning at every single level.
And what's on that first urgent dispatch? The initial warning order that lets those lower units start planning without the final details.
You need the essentials to start positioning themselves and just, thinking.
The basics.
The absolute basics. The initial warning order has to include the type of operation. Is it a defense? Is it an attack? A general outline of the AO, any changes in the field artillery organization, any new fire support coordination measures,
The FSCMs. Right?
FSCMs that restrict fires, communications, and most importantly, the initial timelines. This template just sets the baseline and stops people from spinning their wheels.
I want to spend a moment on that fire's running estimate. You called it a dashboard. How comprehensive is this thing?
It is the FS element's central tool for maintaining just, absolute situational understanding. It's a continuous, proactive assessment.
And its main purpose?
It's really twofold. First, to confirm the operation is unfolding the way the commander intended. And second, and maybe more importantly, to determine if the planned future operations are actually, supportable. Can we physically provide the fire we plan to promise?
Okay, now that's where it gets really interesting. Because if it's a predictive tool, the FS staff must be tracking variables that go way beyond just how many shells do we have.
Oh, way beyond.
What are some of the most specialized inputs they need for this estimate?
They look at everything that touches a projectile or a plane. Let's break it down into three main categories.
All right, hit me with the friendly factors first.
Okay, on the friendly side, they have to track all the specialized assets and the systems that manage them. That includes active airspace control measures, or ACMs.
Air traffic control for the battle.
Basically, yeah.
Yeah.
They ensure friendly aircraft and missiles don't collide. They track the status of all field artillery weapons, ammo types, and critical systems like weapons locating radars, the WLRs.
The ones that hunt enemy guns.
Exactly.
And I imagine they have to account for support from above, too, right?
Absolutely. They're tracking the availability and readiness of close air support, CAS.
Planes attacking ground targets near your own troops.
Right. And also specialized aviation, like air interdiction, which hits targets deep in the enemy rear, and C-aid, suppression of enemy air defenses.
Which clears the way for the other planes.
You got it. They're synthesizing the entire combined arms spectrum.
That is a staggering amount of technical detail just to manage your own side. Now, for the enemy factors, they have to basically write the enemy artillery commander's plan for them.
Precisely. Their input to the IPOE is deep, specialized intelligence. They analyze the probable courses of action, the COAs, that are open to the enemy artillery commander.
Based on what the main intel guys are seeing.
Yeah. Track enemy dispositions, how wide is their front, how deep are their forces. They analyze the mobility of the enemy artillery and, critically, the enemy's electronic warfare situation.
Because if they can jam your radios or GPS...
Your entire plan falls apart. That intelligence directly dictates where they position their own radar and guns.
And finally, the logistical and environmental constraints. The stuff that people might overlook but can sink the whole operation.
They're absolutely critical constraints. They analyze the impact of terrain and weather. For instance, strong winds will dramatically affect smoke rounds.
Right.
And cloud cover is crucial for CAS aircraft. They also have to calculate the availability and condition of roads. I mean, can we actually move our massive artillery pieces and the fuel trucks needed to sustain them?
So they're planning where the ammo needs to be ahead of time.
Exactly. The running estimate is the single best way to avoid being surprised by reality.
Okay, so we've finished the immediate assessment. We've built our real-time dashboard. Now we move into step 2, mission analysis. This is where that initial parallel planning starts to mature. They're reviewing the commander's intent 2 levels up, trying to get the big picture.
This step is where the intelligence and the fire's plans formally merge. The detailed FS participation in the IPOE during mission analysis sets the stage. It lets them define the essential fire support tasks, the EFSTs.
You need to know your environment before you decide what to do in it.
That's it.
So what are the FSC's measurable outputs here? It sounds like they're translating all that raw data from the estimate into defined capabilities.
Exactly. They take the technical status of all their assets, ammo counts, radar status, aircraft availability, and they convert those facts into clear fire support capabilities they can offer, limitations they face, and vulnerabilities the enemy might exploit.
And
From this, they develop draft EFSTs. These are simple statements that pair a required tactical task with its purpose. For example, suppress enemy air defenses, that's the task, to allow CAS ingress, that's the purpose.
Wait a second, if the FSC is identifying targets here, aren't they stepping on the intelligence staff's toes? How do they avoid conflict?
That's a great question, and it shows why the communication has to be seamless. The intel team, they identify high-value targets, or HVTs.
Targets that are valuable to the enemy.
Right, like their command posts or main supply routes. The FSC, however, takes that list and, based on the friendly commander's intent, identifies the initial high payoff targets, or HPTs.
Okay, so what's the difference then? High value versus high payoff.
The difference is the payoff for us. An HPT is a target whose loss to the enemy will contribute the most significantly to the success of our own mission.
So an enemy command post might be an HVT.
It might be. But if our mission is to bypass their forward troops, the HPT might be a specific mobile artillery unit that threatens our breaching force. It's a filtration process based purely on what helps us win.
Once they've done this analysis, the FSC gives their input for the big mission analysis briefing. What does the commander need to hear from them at this point?
The commander needs to hear the FS capabilities, the initial assessment of where the HPTs are, and, crucially, guidance on the desired effects from file support. What does the commander want the fires to do to the enemy?
And that input shapes the commander's whole picture of the battle.
It shapes his entire visualization of how fires will support maneuver.
Which brings us to the core of the whole thing, the commander's intent. This clear, concise expression of the purpose and the desired end state. Why is it so vital that FS personnel understand this inside and out?
Because the entire design of the FS plan, which later becomes the scheme of fires, has to directly support the commander's concept of operations.
If it doesn't.
If the plan doesn't directly advance that stated purpose, it's a waste of resources, time, and ammunition. They need a shared understanding, a synchronized visualization, so every shell fired supports the commander's highest objective.
The sources have a great example of this nested intent. How does a massive strategic goal translate down into tactical guidance for one unit?
Think of it like a set of dominoes, or nested layers. The top commander, the JFLCC, might state his intent is defeating any ground forces Ariana employs to attack Atropia.
A huge strategic goal.
Massive. But that goal is then supported by the 52nd Division commander below him, who translates it into key tactical tasks for fires. Things like maneuver to in-place fires forward quickly, and leveraging information collection to detect and destroy division HPTs.
So you can draw a straight line?
You see the linkage. The strategic defeat of an entire army is literally dependent on tactical FS units moving their guns forward and hitting specific high payoff targets.
And that tactical blueprint is called the Scheme of Fires. What does this scheme formalize?
The Scheme of Fires is an indispensable part of the concept of operations. You find it in Annex D of the Order. It's the final blueprint that describes how to integrate and synchronize all lethal and non-lethal FS capabilities to create those desired effects.
So it tells everyone what to do.
It must clearly state what fires are supposed to accomplish in the operation and set the priorities of fires for each phase.
So prescriptive enough for coordination, but flexible enough for execution.
Exactly. It has to answer the who, what, when, where, and why of the fires, the big picture, but it deliberately provides enough flexibility for subordinate commanders to figure out the how.
Right.
The goal is procedural control and safety, while letting the guys on the ground make tactical decisions.
This gets us to the specialized language commanders use. They don't just point at a map and say, shoot there. They direct a specific desired change in effect.
That's right. And this is where the complexity really is. The commander has to clearly articulate the intended outcome, which might not even be physical destruction. The language of effects ranges from total destruction to something entirely psychological.
Let's pull out a few of the more interesting, differentiated effects from the sources. How about deceive? How on earth does fire support pull off tactical deception?
Deception fires are all about misleading the enemy decision makers. The classic example is using heavy prep fire artillery on a false landing zone or an avenue of approach we have no intention of using.
Why does that work?
Because it reinforces a preconceived notion the enemy commander might already have. It diverts their attention, their reserves, their intel assets to the wrong place. You're using lethal assets to deliver a non-lethal psychological effect.
Using guns to tell a lie? That's incredible. What about delay?
Delaying an enemy force is just trading space for time. The purpose is to inflict maximum damage on the enemy without letting your own delaying force get decisively engaged.
Slow them down.
Exactly. Slow their momentum, force them into bad spots. And crucially, when those delayed enemy forces finally start massing behind, say, a damaged bridge, it results in a more concentrated set of targets for your fires later.
And defeat. That seems straightforward.
You'd think so. But to defeat is to render an enemy force incapable of achieving its objectives. And while that includes physical destruction, the source points out that massed, synchronized, intense fires can cause enemy personnel to lose the will to continue to fight.
So it's about morale.
Defeat is an effect directed at morale, cohesion, and leadership, not just hardware percentages.
Speaking of percentages, let's nail down the quantitative difference between the three main lethal effects. This 30-10-3 rule seems crucial.
This is where planning becomes pure math and resource management. When you talk about the computed effects of field artillery, the difference is, well, it's logistical destiny.
Okay.
Destroy renders a target permanently out of action. That requires 30% casualties or material damage.
30%.
Neutralization renders a target ineffective for a short period. That requires 10% casualties or material damage.
10.
And suppress just temporarily degrades the system, forces the enemy to take cover. That requires only at least 3% casualties or material damage.
The insight there is the trade-off. If your logistics are tight, a commander choosing neutralize over destroy is making a calculated risk.
A huge one.
He's saving 2/3 of his ammo, which means he can fight longer or hit 3 times as many targets. It's a pure logistical risk management choice.
That is exactly the point. The desired effect is fundamentally linked to your sustainment plan. You only apply the 30% damage if you absolutely must remove that target from the board permanently. Otherwise, you conserve.
Finally, as part of their guidance, commanders impose mandatory targeting restrictions. These are the hard boundaries. You mentioned two distinct lists.
Yes, and understanding the difference is paramount. The first is the no-strike list.
Okay.
This list covers objects or entities protected under international law or the rules of engagement. Think hospitals, specific historical sites, things like that.
Off limits, period.
Deliberately engaging them may be a violation of the law of war. They are off limits.
And the second list?
That is a restricted target list. These are valid military targets, but constraints have been placed on how it can be engaged.
What kind of constraints?
It could be anything. Limit collateral damage to 0 within 500 meters, or strike only with a certain type of precision weapon, or even a time constraint like do not strike during daytime hours. The target's valid, but the engagement is conditional.
This deep dive has really shown that fire support planning is not a reactive job. It's not just calling in airstrikes. It is a continuous, systematic process embedded in every single stage of high-level decision-making.
The central requirement for success is clear. The commander and the fire support coordinator, the FSCUR, they have to achieve a complete shared understanding of the commander's visualization.
If they're not on the same page.
If that intent isn't perfectly synchronized, the fires will inevitably fail to deliver the desired effect.
We learned that an effect is defined as a resulting change to a condition, behavior, or degree of freedom. We know that if the goal is destroy, the target needs 30% physical damage, a number we can calculate. But if the commander's goal is deceive, a behavioral effect targeting the enemy's mind, what measurable standards determine success? And how much harder is it to plan for a behavioral change in the enemy than a physical one? Something for you to consider the next time you hear about military operations.